I think we came to the planet. I think our soul came to the planet to evolve in our ability to love and to manifest the gifts that we've been given, because each of us has those unique gifts. But they did get buried from childhood, especially when there's trauma. So yes, it's so important to unearth that. And then we can manifest that and have the joy of that and continue to evolve in our ability to love, which is why we're here. I've heard from in reading things like people who've had near-death experiences, that the one question they're asked as soon as they're out of their body is, how well did you love? Now, I want to be able to answer that with my whole heart and soul. I love it, my whole heart and soul.
Yes.
Yeah.
Welcome to Letting Go and the Greatest Secret, where we explore the end of your suffering and the beginning of lasting happiness. I'm Hale Dwoskin, and today I'll be joined by Margaret Paul. Dr. Margaret Paul is a best-selling author of 12 published books, relationships expert, and co-creator of the powerful inner bonding self-healing process. She has appeared on numerous radio and television shows, including Oprah. Margaret is a member of the Transformational Leadership Council. Can you tell me in just a little bit about your work from the top, and then we'll see where it goes from there?
Yeah, so inner bonding is about learning to love yourself. Most people don't have any idea what it means. They might understand it on some level physically or financially, but most people have no idea about what it means to love themselves emotionally and spiritually. Most people have no idea also how to connect with a higher source of love and guidance and wisdom and truth to guide them in what is loving to themselves. So inner bonding teaches people how to do that.
That's wonderful. So what is inner bonding?
Inner bonding is a 6-step pathway. There's 6 steps that bring you along to being able to learn to connect with your feelings and take responsibility for them, to understand the false beliefs that you might be operating from. It's based on the concept of intention, that in any given moment, you're either open to learning about loving yourself and sharing your love with others, or you're trying to control and protect and avoid pain, which keeps you very, very limited. And it's about, like I said, being able to connect with a higher source of love and truth.
So how do you do that?
Okay. Would you like me to go through the steps of inner bonding?
Oh, yes. Again, I like to make these interviews as helpful to people as possible. So the more we can demonstrate, the more we can actually explain, the more we give people a taste of what you do, the more likely they are to want to follow up with you. But more importantly, I want them to feel coming away from this interview that they gain some value from it.
Okay, so I can take people through the 6 steps. They can do it along with what I'm saying to them and see what happens. Obviously, this is very brief. So we start with taking some deep breaths and using your breath, following your breath, putting your mind in your breath. Most people are in their head, and so the breath can take you out of your head and into your body. And you want to go into your body and scan your body for any physical sensations, because emotions generally show up physically, like a tightness in your stomach or your chest, might indicate anxiety, or an empty feeling might indicate depression, things like that. Tightness in your jaw may mean that you're feeling angry. So take some deep breaths, breathe in, and notice any physical sensations, and see if you can tune into what those are telling you. Or are you feeling any anxiety or depression or guilt or shame or anger or aloneness or emptiness or jealousy? Feelings like that indicate that our wounded self, our ego wounded self, is in charge. We're operating from various false beliefs, and we're abandoning ourselves. And let me briefly go through the 4 ways that people generally abandon themselves. This can be
Please,
very
yes.
helpful to people. So one is that we've learned to stay in our head. When we were little and we had pain, most of us had pain, we couldn't manage the pain unless we happened to have parents who really knew how to manage theirs and helped us manage ours. We couldn't manage it, and the pain was in our body. So we learned to go up in our head. So that's one way. We stay up in our head. We completely disconnect from our body. Well, that's a form of self-abandonment because, like let's say you have a baby, and instead of listening for the baby cry, you put the baby in a crib and go out to lunch. You'd be abandoning the baby. You wouldn't be hearing when there's something to attend to.
Mm-hmm.
The second way that people often abandon themselves is they judge themselves. Many of us were brought up, I was brought up with a lot of judgment. And so we incorporate that ego wounded voice of our parents and other caregivers into the lower part of our left brain, the amygdala, the lower amygdala. And this part has a tendency to want to judge us. You're not good enough. You didn't do it right. You better be perfect. Oh my God, look what a jerk you are. You really messed up. Nobody's going to like you. All kinds of false beliefs. Well, of course, again, if we treated a child that way, that child would feel unloved, rejected, and abandoned. And that's what we're doing to ourselves when we give that wounded voice agency over us. The third way is that most people have learned to numb out their feelings with various addictions. They use food or alcohol or drugs or television or work or gambling or video games or pornography, so many different ways of avoiding feeling their feelings. And like, again, if a child came to you upset and instead of being there, you just went and grazed in front of the refrigerator or you grabbed a drink, the child would feel rejected, would feel abandoned. And then the fourth way, which really affects relationships, is that we tend to make other people responsible for our feelings. It's like when I grew up when my mother was angry, which she was a lot, she'd say, "You make me so angry."
Right.
And so it was my fault and,
Yes.
blaming me for her feelings. Well, people tend to do that. They get into relationships and they basically hand their feelings over, which we can call our feeling self, our inner child. They're handing that inner child over to the other person and saying, "It's up to you to make me feel happy and safe and worthy and fill me up."
Good luck
And
with that.
right. And so since we attract at our common level of self-abandonment or self-love, we're going to attract somebody who's doing the same thing. So that person is going to expect us to make them okay. We're going to expect them to make us okay. But if we're not loving ourselves, we don't have any love to share. And so that relationship doesn't work very well.
Mm-hmm.
So when we abandon ourselves in these ways, we're going to feel these painful feelings.
Yes.
And in inner bonding, we separate feelings into two different kinds. One is those ones that we cause with our self-abandonment, like I said, the anxiety, depression, guilt, shame, all that. The other are the feelings of life, like the grief over loss or the loneliness when we want to share love and there's nobody around, or the helplessness over people being mean or unloving to us or themselves or others, the deep sadness, like of seeing what's going on in the world. There's many of these very painful feelings that we learn to avoid as children. The heartbreaks, we had so much heartbreak, so many of us, and we couldn't manage them. So
Yes.
Of course we learned to avoid them. But now as adults, we need to learn to lovingly and compassionately manage these feelings so that we don't abandon ourselves in the face of these painful feelings of life. So step one is getting present with your feelings, making a decision that you want responsibility for them. So people can breathe in, feel their feelings, say, yeah, okay, for right now, I want responsibility for them, even though I don't know how to do that yet.
Right.
And then in step two, we breathe into our heart. We consciously open to learning. We're opening to learning about how we're treating ourselves, what we're telling ourselves that may be causing us pain, what our false beliefs are that are causing this, what would be true, and what would be loving to us.
Mm-hmm.
And in step 2, we teach people to open to a higher source of love. So right now, I want to encourage people to just imagine an older, wiser part of you, like you 500 years older than you, your higher self, who loves you and adores you and sees you and is always here to guide you. So just use your imagination to tune into that higher source and invite that love and compassion and strength and wisdom into your heart, because we don't actually generate love and compassion. That's what spirit is, and we open to it and we invite it in. So in step 2, we're inviting that in, and that's what creates an inner bonding, what we call the loving adult. We're a loving adult when we're open to learning and we're connected with our higher self. Mm-hmm. Now, in step 3, go inside. And if you're feeling anything other than peace and fullness inside, if you're feeling any anxiety, depression, emptiness, guilt, shame, any of those feelings, go inside and say, what am I telling you? How am I treating you? What am I doing or not doing that's making you feel this way? Because most people, if they feel that way, they're going to say, well, it's because that person has done this, or that person said that, or this situation happened here, rather than how am I treating myself in the face of it? We've all got challenges, but how am I treating myself in the face of it? Mm-hmm. So let's say I go inside and I'm feeling, let's say I'm feeling numb or empty inside. A lot of people end up feeling numb or empty or anxious. So let's say I'm feeling numb or empty inside. So then I would say, well, what am I telling you? How am I treating you? Now, if that inner self, that inner child, that this is our soul that often communicates through feelings, if we have any kind of connection with that, and it may take time to develop that, but that part of us might say, you don't even know I'm here. And this is what happened for me when I started practicing inner bonding. You don't know I exist. I don't exist for you. You never listen to me. You're totally tuned into everybody else's feelings, but never to me. You're always out there trying to control everybody else and how they feel about us, but you don't pay any attention to me. I don't exist for you. And you're judging me all the time. You're putting a lid on me. You're telling me I got to be perfect. Well, what's that going to create on the inner level? And so we're starting to tune into what we're doing that's creating that. And when we get a sense of that, we go a little deeper into that left brain amygdala that's got all the fear and false beliefs. Mm-hmm. And we're saying, where did I learn that? Where did I get that? Why am I treating myself that way? That part might say, well, if only I'm perfect, then I can control how other people feel about me, and then I'll be okay. A lot of people have that false belief that, yes, that if only we can control getting love from others or getting approval, then we'll be okay. And we're making others responsible for whether or not we're okay. Well, once we get a clear picture of what we're doing, then we go back up and step forward to our higher self. Now, one of the things I want to say about people's ability to do this is that it depends upon their frequency. And there's basically 2 things that need to happen for people to easily access that higher guidance. I call it at-will divine connection, which took me a long time to understand how to have. So the 2 things are, 1, you have to be open to learning. If you're trying to control and avoid and protect, your frequency is too low to access that higher guidance. And the second thing is what you put in your body. If you're eating junk food and you're eating sugar, all the processed food, factory farm food, you're having a lot of alcohol, drugs, all that stuff lowers the energy of the body, the frequency of the body. This took me a long time to put this together because I had been eating really well for many years because I was a sickly kid and I didn't like that. And so I learned to eat really well. But then when inner bonding came in, which came in because I was working as a traditional psychotherapist and didn't like it at all for 17 years. And I started to pray for a process that would really work. And Spirit brought that in. And then I realized, oh, wow, if I just open to learning, then I can access my higher guidance, which I'd been trying to do for years. And it worked. I just started to have this incredible access. So I thought, oh, if only I teach my clients to open to learning, they can have it too.
Yes.
But they didn't, because I didn't realize for a long time it was because I'd been eating so well for so long that the frequency of my body was high enough. Well, once people really love themselves enough to feed themselves well, get enough exercise, get enough sleep, really take care of their body, and practice inner body and open to learning, they start to have that at-will divine connection, which is, I mean, it's just such a different way to live. I'm sure you know that's such a different way to live.
Yes. Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Is it really connecting with the divine, or is it just what's natural? In other words, isn't what you're calling divine connection just that in natural intuitive knowingness that's flowing through all the time? We're just not paying attention to it.
Yes, that's right. It's there. It's there. However you conceptualize it.
Yes.
There, but you can't access it when you're closed or when you're junking up your body. You just can't tune into that inner knowing or higher knowing, however you want to see it. Yes, it's natural to all of us.
Yes.
We're born with it. And then we learn, first of all, we learn not to do it, and we learn not to trust it. Took me a long time to learn to trust that inner and higher knowing.
Right.
So in step 4, you're asking 2 questions. What is the truth about any of the false beliefs that I've uncovered? So if I've got a belief that I can control how others feel about me and they'll make me okay, I'm going to ask. And my higher self will say, well, of course not. Nobody controls how you feel about them. And so you can't control how they feel about you. And anyway, they're not the authority. They don't define you. And so there's so many false beliefs we have, and we start to learn to access what's true. And then I might ask, what's loving to me? Because we don't have role models. I had no role models when I started doing this. My parents were awful role models for self-love. And so I realized I had to learn to turn to another source. And it takes time to start to access what's truly loving to me. And for most people, the first step is just get in their body and start to pay attention to their feelings, because otherwise, how are they going to know that something needs attending to? But there's so many loving actions. Could be speaking up with somebody. It could be eating better. It could be going back to school, changing jobs. I mean, there's just so many things.
Yes.
But when we open to learning, we can find what that is. And step 5 is we take that loving action. And step 6 is we go back and evaluate, how do I feel? And if indeed I've taken a loving action, I'm going to feel some relief. And so this is a pathway that people can follow. They can bring in all kinds of other things, all kinds of meditation and other processes to help them with it. But this is a very powerful pathway, completely changed my life and hundreds of thousands of people that I've worked with over the years.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So is an action required to shift the inner perception, or can that perception shift without external action and the action comes from that?
Well, it's not necessarily an external action. It may be an internal action, but it's an action, some kind of action that shows the wounded part of us that the belief is false, that it's not working. We have to do something different to show ourselves that the belief isn't working.
Sure.
I don't know if you've heard Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, but she has done a great job of understanding the brain. She wrote My Stroke of Insight. She's the neuroscientist that had the stroke. And so I've spoken to her about the different parts of the brain and how they relate to inner bonding. And so the upper left brain is the part of us that takes action in the world.
Yes.
Lower left brain, as I said, is that ego, wounded self with all the false beliefs. So if the actions of the upper left brain are coming from the lower left brain, nothing's going to change. We're being informed by fear and false beliefs, and we have only to look around the world to see what happens when people are operating out of their ego wounded self. The lower right brain is where that soul is, that beautiful, magnificent part of us. That's the spark of the divine. And the upper right brain is the part that does naturally connect with that higher knowing, that intuition. So when we develop that ability to connect to what's true and what's loving, then the actions of our left brain are informed by our upper right brain rather than by our lower left brain. And this part of us can bring nurturing down inside to who we really are, to our soul, to our feelings, and can even discover who we are. My parents couldn't see me at all. They had no idea who I am, none whatsoever. And so I had to discover that through my higher access. And many people, they just don't get seen, so they don't know themselves, and then they're dependent on other people's approval to be okay. But when you have that access, you start to get to know who you are and value who you are, and as you develop that upper right brain access, you can bring that nurturing down inside, and that's what it means to love yourself.
Mm-hmm. And doesn't it become, when you engage in a process like this, doesn't it become more natural and spontaneous as opposed to a step process?
Oh, yeah. After a while, you don't even think about the steps. At the beginning, you have to think about it. When I first started doing inner bonding, I thought it would never be natural. I thought I would always have to consciously choose an intention to learn about loving myself, because the automatic default setting is to abandon ourselves. That's what we've learned. But after a lot of practice, it did become natural. Now
Yes.
I don't automatically go to that self-abandoning lower left brain. And that's just so wonderful that it became so much more automatic.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like it. That's beautiful. So when you are in alignment with truth, how does life experienced?
Well, then you have a lot of joy in your life. Your relationships improve. You get to share love. So many people enter a relationship to get love,
Right.
and they have no idea about that. The true joy is in sharing love. But if you're not loving yourself, you don't have love to share. So as you learn to love yourself, your relationships improve so much, because now you're able to share love. Your frequency is higher, and so you're so much more able to manifest your dreams, because we do co-create with spirit, whatever people want to call that. I wasn't brought up with any of that. My parents were atheists, and I didn't learn any of that. So I had to kind of learn it on my own. But I found, as I have learned to be open to learning and connect with my higher guidance, that I am so much more able to manifest what I want in life. It's just amazing what happens when you're in alignment with love and in alignment with truth. You start to feel that deep sense of peace inside, and deep sense of joy, and you get all filled up with love, and you just want to share it with others. It's like night and day. My life is like night and day right now from how it was before.
That's great. That's great. And so this love that you talk about, how would you describe it? What is love?
I think love is what the universe is. I think love is what God is, or whatever you want to call that. I think love is beauty. Love is truth. Love is joy. Love, I mean, that's my experience. And I mean, it's hard to define love. Love is kind. Love is compassionate. Love is caring.
Yes.
But it's an experience, like, how do you describe red to a blind person? It's an experience. You just get filled up with it. There's no emptiness inside.
Yes.
When you have that connection, you get all filled up with it, and it just comes flowing out. And it enhances your creativity. You're able to stay present. I mean, It's wonderful.
Great. I can tell that that's your experience. That's beautiful. It's beautiful. And besides the inner bonding process, are there any other things that you know are helpful to people?
Yeah, so I work with a lot of people who have had a tremendous amount of trauma. And, a lot of people think, oh, I'm too damaged, I can't heal. Well, fortunately, that's not true because
Yes.
there's a part of us that was never damaged. But
Actually,
there,
can you pause there for a second? Can you talk a
yeah,
little bit about that, the part of us that was never damaged?
yeah, there's a deep part inside of us, of our soul, that never took on what was done to us.
Hmm.
The problem is it's gone underground for a lot of people. They don't know how to access it.
Hmm.
As they learn and practice inner bonding, they start to unearth that undamaged part of their soul. Now, there's a lot of wonderful trauma therapies around. There's the emotional freedom technique, and there's somatic experiencing, and there's EMDR, and there's a lot of them, and they're all good. They're all helpful. But if you're also not practicing inner bonding, what happens, because we absorb the wounded selves of our parents or caregivers, is that we continually re-traumatize ourselves with our various forms of self-abandonment. So people can benefit short term from the trauma therapies, but if they don't learn to love themselves, it does not become truly healing within them. So with anybody who's had trauma that I work with, I always encourage them to do some of the trauma therapy, see what works well for them. Of course, I help them to look at their diet, how they're eating, finding a form of meditation that they love, finding a form of exercise that they love. I mean, there's so much out there that's wonderful and can be helpful to people. But if they're not loving themselves, they're re-traumatizing themselves. And so this is like basic to the other forms of therapy working for them.
Yes, we found with our work, uh, which is also about both releasing the past traumas, but also acknowledging that which has never been traumatized, and
Yeah.
which some people might call love.
Yeah.
And the two go hand in hand. If you're just trying to fix a problem, you can always find another problem to fix.
Right.
But if there's a recognition that there's something beyond just fixing what is broken, there is a wholeness or beauty or unicity that needs no fixing or changing. It
That's
is
right.
just as it is, and that's perfect.
It's perfect. That's right.
Yes, and the more we also acknowledge that, or it more becomes our living experience, the more that colors everything else.
Yeah. And that's one of the things we do is we help people tap into that part of themselves, that part, like you said, that is love.
Yeah.
It's a spark of that love that the universe is. And it's got so many beautiful facets. Each one of us is not only love, but we have our gifts. And these were not, they're not gone. They've been buried for a lot of people, but they're there. And as people really learn to see and value and love themselves, they start to unearth all that they are. Because I think we came to the planet. I think our soul came to the planet to evolve in our ability to love and to manifest the gifts that we've been given.
Mhm.
Because each of us has those unique gifts, but they did get buried from childhood, especially when there's trauma. So yes, it's so important to unearth that, and then we can manifest that and have the joy of that and continue to evolve in our ability to love, which is why we're here. I've heard from in reading things like people who've had near death experiences, that the one question they're asked as soon as they're out of their body is, how well did you love?
Hmm.
Now, I want to be able to answer that with my whole heart and soul. I love with my whole heart and soul.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Does love need an object?
Does love what?
Need an object?
No, no, no. I mean, we have to bring it into ourselves first, and we get filled with it, and we can send it out into the world in so many ways.
Mm.
It can be in a relationship, it can be through creativity, it can be through philanthropy. There's so many ways
Mhm.
that we can express our love in the world.
Yes.
And we want to. When we get filled up with it, we want to. It doesn't need a particular object in order for us to express it. We're around people all day long, most people, unless you're a hermit. And you get to be loving to anybody you're around if you're all filled up with love.
Yeah. Well, it's natural and spontaneous.
Right.
Right. So, what else would you like to share with our audience that you think would be useful for them to take with them?
So, you asked about an object, but a lot of people, most of us are social beings, and we do want to be in relationships, whether it's a primary one or with friends or whoever. But at work we have relationships,
Yes.
and of course, a lot of people have a lot of problems with their relationships, and they think it's the other person because most
Yes.
of us.
Yes, that's true. It's
Right,
you.
right.
You need to change.
Right. Yeah, and that's right. So most of us are very aware of what somebody else is doing, but not very aware of what we're doing.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Yes.
yeah, and so one of the things that I do when I work with any two people, whether they're uh, at work together or they're partners or they're parent child, is I help each of them see their end of the system because
Right.
everybody's got their own end of the system.
Yes. Yes.
And with a lot of people, their end is obvious. They're angry, they're blaming, they're overt in their form of control. Whereas for a lot of people, they're covert
Yes. Yes.
in their form of control and they don't realize. See, I didn't realize how I was trying to control. And my main way of controlling was to caretake, to give myself up.
Right.
Somebody was upset with me. I had to be perfect. I would tap dance around. I would do everything to try and please them. Well, that was my end of the system and it doesn't work. And so, one of the things that's so important is for each person to learn about what do they do with anybody. It doesn't even have to be a primary relationship.
Mhm.
Let's say they're just meeting somebody in a social gathering. Are they filled up with love and just able to share, or are they trying to be perfect? Are they trying to say the right thing? Are they pulling on the person in some way?
Yes.
When we're not taking responsibility for ourselves, it's like we got a black hole inside, and that
Yeah.
black hole is like a
Please fill me. Yes. Yes.
yeah, yeah. So love
Absolutely.
me, feel me, tell me
Right.
I'm
Right.
okay, right?
Yeah. Right. Right.
And
Right.
then they wonder why people are backing off from them.
Yes, yes. Well, that's what happens.
Yeah, that's right.
Everyone's had that experience where they're around someone, and because they're wanting something from you, you can feel this inner pulling back up.
That's
No,
right.
thank you.
That's right. And some people don't even know why they're pulling back.
Yes, yes. It's
They just know this
automatic.
isn't feeling good. I'm getting drained.
Right, right, right. So the other thing is, do you help people also just open to seeing it from the other person's point of view?
Oh, yes. So, if I'm working with a couple, um, I'm working with each one on their end of the system. But
Yes.
also, see, as people learn to love themselves, bring in compassion, they start to be able to extend that compassion out and to see the effect. For example, somebody who's really angry needs to understand how scared the other person is of that anger, because most of us get scared when somebody's really angry. But
Mhm.
if the other person tends to just shut down and withdraw, they need to understand how lonely the other person is when they do that.
Mhm.
People who tend to shut down don't think that they're hurting somebody. They think, well, I'm hurt because this person's angry, but I'm not hurting. I'm just getting out of the way of the anger. And they don't realize that they're also hurting the other person. So I help each person to express the pain that they're in
Mhm.
when the other person is behaving from their ego wounded self and acting out in their particular protective, avoidant, and controlling ways, so that they can start to have compassion for each other.
Great. That's wonderful. So let's see. I think we covered a lot of the issue, a lot of the points you wanted us to make. Do you have like a challenge you have for people, that something they could work on on their own?
Yeah. So I think a really good challenge is just to start to practice remembering to stay present in your body. Because if you don't, I call it having your inner baby monitor on. When when you have a baby and you want to be a good parent, you have a baby monitor on. So when the baby cries, you can attend.
Right,
But
right.
most people, they don't have that inner baby monitor on. And it took me a long time to be able to even remember to get present in my body. And you can't take care of your feelings if you don't even know that you have them. And
Right.
so a great challenge is learning to stay present. And what people can do is like set their phone to go off to remind them to get inside, or wear rubber bands, or put sticky notes around, or things I had to have a lot of reminders because I completely forgot. I was so used to being in my head. And
Right.
so that's a really important challenge for people. It's about getting present, really present in this moment, rather than focusing on the past, focusing on the future, but being present inside your body. So
Yes.
that's the challenge.
Yes. Oh, it's a good challenge. It is. It is. Thank you. So, any last words you'd like to share with everybody?
Well,
Or
one
not
other,
last forever, just last for
yeah,
this
but
conversation.
yeah, there's a couple of things. One is anybody can learn this if they want to. There's no
Good.
such thing as not being able to learn it. But I also want to stress really caring about yourself enough to feed yourself well. 60% of the people here in the US eat the junk food, and
Yes.
it numbs you out. It creates so many of the physical problems. I know it's hard to change, but once you do, you will feel so much better. One of the things that I often share that I hope inspires people is that I was a sickly kid. I got sick in my mid 40s when I was giving myself up. You can't just keep doing that. Now at 82, I have tremendous health and vitality. And I don't have any of the illnesses that most of the people my age have. And I want people to know that when you learn to love yourself physically, emotionally, spiritually, you can have incredible health and joy in your life.
Beautiful. Well, thank you. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Margaret Paul. You can learn more about Margaret at innerbonding.com. That's innerbonding.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe so you have immediate access to future episodes. Please give us a 5-star rating and share it with the people you care about. If you'd like to learn more about my work, my mentor Lester Levinson's work, and the Sedona Method, please visit www.sedona.com. As you explore our site, you'll learn the key to lasting happiness, success, peace, and emotional well-being. We have books, courses, events, and plenty of free material to explore. Again, go to sedona.com. That's sedona.com. Thank you for being here, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Letting Go and the Greatest Secret.